Welcome to our version control workshop. My name is Jasmine Prano, and I'm a third year comp sci major.
And my name is Justin Chung. I am also a third year in computer science, and we're both going to be the speakers for this workshop. So, to get started, what are we doing here today? We're going to be learning about version control for your game projects. We're going to be creating our first GitHub repository, and we're going to learn how to use Unity with version control so you can work with your teams. Alright, to start off, let me explain what version control is. Version control is a system that allows multiple developers to work together on the same project. Basically, it allows you to share your project with the rest of your team, so if anyone makes changes to it, everyone else gets those changes. Another thing that it does, it saves a history of changes that you made to a project. So even if you're working on a solo project, it might be useful to use version control. So if you make some mistakes, you can rewind your project to a previous version. Okay, now let's go over some version control terminology. The term Git is the version control system that manages repositories and commits. It's the system that manages the files that you'll be sharing and changing. A commit is a package of changes. When you make changes to some files, you'll turn them into a commit by packaging them together. You do so you can push that commit to a repository. And a repository is a collection of commits and their history. It's where your files and the history of the changes that you made to those files are being saved. And finally, a branch of is a linear history of commits on a repository. It shows you what commits were made and when they were pushed onto the repository. A repository starts with a main branch but can have new ones added onto it. Alright, so here you see a simple diagram of how Git works. Over here on the top, we have GitHub. That's actually the site where we'll be making and keeping our repositories at. Inside GitHub, we'll be making a repository, and that's where we'll keep our project and all the files at. And if you look at the bottom two, we have two developers with their own copy of repository. And how Git works is that everyone has a copy of the repository, and whenever they make changes to the project, they will push it over to the copy of the repository that GitHub has. And whenever someone wants to work on the project, before they work on it, they pull from the GitHub repository, or whenever changes are made to it, you pull, and then those changes will go onto your copy of the project. Basically, it's like everyone having a copy of the project, but whenever you make a change to it, you push it over to one central project that everyone then pulls from. So those changes that you made will go onto their specific project, that specific copy that they have. And over here is a diagram showing how branches work. As I said before, every repository starts out with a main branch, which is shown by the straight line with the blue dots. All these blue dots along this line are commits made to the branch. The line that branches off from this main straight line is a second branch made in the repository, and the green dots are commits to that second branch. We won't be going over how to make branches in this workshop, but they're useful to learn once you get the hang of version control. Let's say you want to edit your project, but you're afraid the changes you want to make will interfere with the rest of your team. Editing the project on a separate branch is a good way to make those changes while still having the main branch for the rest of your team to use. When your branch version of the project is ready to be used, you can then merge your branch back to the main branch, saving your changes back onto the main project, as you can see at the end of the main diagram.
Alright, this is a continuation of the terminology shown before, since now we will be able to get into the website and program that this club uses. GitHub is a code hosting platform for version control and collaboration. It lets you and others work together on projects from anywhere. Sourcetree is a Git desktop client for developers. Before you install Sourcetree, create a GitHub account. Well, this is if you haven't already. Now we will be going over the installation process of Sourcetree. Once you download it, you will have to register your Sourcetree app that we are installing with Bitbucket. There are two options, which are Bitbucket Server and Bitbucket. The difference between them are that the Bitbucket Server option would be if I wanted to download all of Bitbucket to my machine and run it from my laptop. If I wanted to let Atlassian manage my source code, it would be Bitbucket, which is why we choose this option. Get_ignore is a special file that tells Get which file you want to automatically exclude from repositories. This is why we click No. There will be a window that says Load SSH key. You can also click No on that.
Right, so now that we have everything installed and set up, let's go ahead and make our repository. So what you want to do is go back to your GitHub account, and anywhere on the site really, you want to go over here, click on this plus sign, and click New Repository. Okay, so on this page, first off, what you want to do is name your repository. I'm going to name my example repo. And then it doesn't really matter if you want to set yours to private or public. And over here, what does matter is that you want to add a gitignore to this repository. And the reason for that is that we're working with Unity, so we need to add a Unity gitignore. So type in Unity, and this should pop up. Add that in, and this should be good for you to create. Let me do it once over. Yeah. Okay. So what a gitignore does is basically there are certain files that you don't want to keep track of in your repository in Unity, specifically because those files won't saving those files won't change the project, and actually some of those files are constantly being updated even if you don't do anything in the editor. So having this gitignore will allow GitHub to ignore those types of files. And GitHub has this preset gitignore for Unity, so we don't have to create it manually. Okay, so now that we have this set up, we can go ahead and add this repository to our source tree. Alright, now that we have our repository created on GitHub, we can go ahead and set it up on Sourcetree. So what we want to do is open up Sourcetree. You should see a page somewhat like this. And over here we want to have a new tab. If you don't have one already, you want to click on the plus sign to make a new one. And you want to click on clone. And so what this allows us to do is to access a repository created from a site using Sourcetree. And what we want to do is we want to go back to GitHub. So we want to go back to the website, and we want to go to the repository that we just created. If we go over here to this green button, click on it, and then over here we have this clone section over here. We want to click on here to copy this link that we have here. This is the link that we have for our repository, and we want to copy it. If we go back to Sourcetree, we can paste that down, and this will link Sourcetree to our repository. Now we have access to it, and over here is actually the file location where our copy of the repository is going to be. So let me just change this real quick to the place where I want it to be. Right, so after we have a location of where we want to keep our project at, we're going to have a name for the project, and then after this is all set up, we can go ahead and clone it. And it's going to clone it. So now that we have it cloned, we have this little space over here. Over here is a little file status. This shows us if we made any changes to the project that have not been saved. And over here, it shows all our progress that we made on our project, all the past commits, that all the past changes we made that we have saved to the repository. And so far we haven't made any, so this is just empty except our initial creation of this repository. So now we have that set up, we can go ahead and make our Unity project for this repository. Right, so now I'm on Unity and I'm making a new project. I've named this version control project. And what we want to do is we want to have the location of the project at the same place um, where our um, repository is located on our project, where we made our source tree repository. So over here I have a Unity projects tutorials version control workshop. Should be the same as the file location over here. If you look at settings, events, yeah, over here. Unity projects tutorial, version control workshop, and yes. Okay. So if we go over here, we should be good to go ahead and create this. Okay, so after your Unity projects loads up, um, you can, if we go over to the source tree, we can see at the file status, you can see we have some files over here at unstaged files. And what this means is that source tree or a repository is recognizing some unsaved changes to our repository, stuff that we added, and we could save onto it. And so you can see over here, we got a big list of files. And if you can see, some of these files are pretty weird, like random combinations of letters and words. That's actually this kind of files we want to avoid pushing. Stuff that will get that we want our get ignored to prevent seeing. And the reason why they're showing up now and not being ignored by get ignore is because what we actually want to do is we want to go to our repository location where we made our project, and we want to take our get ignore and we want to move it onto our project location. Doing this will make it so that um, our repository will actually use the did ignore. And as you can see here, um, the random files that we were getting are gone. So, and now we just want to save these changes. And to do that, first off, we want to stage the file. What you can do is you can click on the file and you can click on multiple files by shift clicking. And you could stage selected, those will stage these selected files, or you can click the stage all. This stage selected is good if maybe you're working in a project and then you want to save something, but you only want to save specific files. This is a good way to save certain files, but leave the rest of your changes. Uh, leave the rest of your changes unsaved if you're still working on them or something. But however, in this case, we want to stage all, so now they're over here in the stage file section. And what we want to do is we want to commit it. But before we commit it, we want to make a comment saying what we did for this um, stage file commit. So what I'm gonna do is gonna say created Unity project because that's what you did. So then we click on our commit button, and what that does, it packages up all our unsaved files, and now it's in a little package and it's ready to be sent to our repository. And to send it, we push it over, and as you can see here, we have a little indicator 1 next to our push, meaning we have one thing to push. And if we click on that, we asked what branch we want to work on. Right now we're working on the main branch, um, and so we want to check over on the make sure the main branch is checked. Click the push button, and that'll push it over to our repository. And now that we made our initial commit, we created our Unity project, all that is saved. If we go over to the website, and let's just refresh this page, we can see over here that you don't see the gitignore file anymore because we sent that into the version control project, but you can see that the file is here with all the assets, packages, and gitignore and everything. Great. Okay, so now that we have our project all set up, we're gonna go over collaborating over a repository as a team, because that's the whole reason why you make a repository in the first place. So what you want to do is go back to GitHub, go back to your repository, and over here you want to go over to settings, and you want to click on manage access. And over here is where all your collaborators are at. This is the list of people that you have that have access to the project. Right now, I don't have any. But what you want to do is, after one person on your team has made a repository, you want to get everyone else on your team. You want to get their username. And once you get your username, you want to go over to invite collaborator and you want to type it in. Right here I got Jasmine's username, so I'm going to click on that, and this is going to add them to this repository, and that's going to send an invite, and when she checks her email, she should see an email from GitHub saying that that they now have access to the repository, or it would send an invite link, and after they accept, they should be able to go over here to their should have access to the repository and be able to clone it onto their source tree.
Once I accept the invitation, I will have access to the repository, and this will allow me to clone it onto SourceTree. So I copy the link and paste it here. So let's do that. That just kind of automatically fills in for you. But you will have to browse and add this to a new folder. It is recommended to have a folder dedicated to repositories. But since this is for tutorial purposes, I'll just create a new folder called test. It's also important for you to have an empty folder. You won't be able to clone anything if it's not empty. Now you can click clone, and it'll take a second, but you can see there's all these assets here. Before we can move on, I wanted to go over the default user information options. So you go to Tools, you click Options. Once you click Options, there's going to be a window that pops up. Your full name should be placed here, and this email should be the one that you use for your GitHub account. You can also change the theme to dark mode. Then we have to look at the authentication. These are the preferred settings. Hosting server should be GitHub, preferred protocol should be HTTP, authentication should be OAuth. In order for your GitHub to be linked to your authentication page, which was previously shown, you will have to put your username, or you can refresh the OAuth token. And if you're already logged into your GitHub account through your browser, then SourceTree will request access to do some changes to your GitHub account, and then you'll be all set. Well, I just wanted to go over a little bit of the interface. So these two tabs up here are different projects that you can access. File status is empty at the moment, but if there are any pending changes, then that will be seen here. History shows you the history of the comments that your partners will be able to do. And comments tells you what your partner has been working on. It's a better example of it. The different colors correspond to the different partners on your team. The branches shows what's happening on each branch, but most beginners will really only be using the master branch. We will go over a little bit more soon, but right now I wanted to go over how to add the project Justin created onto my Unity Hub. So you'll click that add button right there, and the folder that I created earlier that has everything inside of it will be used. I have successfully added the project. So now I guess I can add a 2D object sprite. Just added a square, so cool. Since I created a square, I want to be able to share it with Justin. So firstly, I stage all, then I comment, and then commit, push. It's gonna take a second, but then it was a success.
Okay, so now we're back at my side, and as we can see, there's no change to the project. Or at least we don't see any change to the project. The change has been made, but there's an issue in Sourcetree. Basically, it needs to update in some way before you can see changes to the project. Because of this, you don't want to rely on Sourcetree to know when to pull. It's a good idea to make a habit of pulling your project before editing it. And it's also good to keep in touch with your team to know who's doing what and what files you should touch and not touch. Okay, so the notification didn't pop up actually. And so over here we can see that it wants us to pull. So let's just pull right now. And now as we can see here on the history, now there's a new commit, and it's the square that Jasmine added. Alright, so that's the basics of Sourcetree and version control. We know enough that we can collaborate with our team and push in pro and share a project. Now let's go over one thing that you might come across when you're working on the project, and that's a merge conflict. Basically, working with Sourcetree, you can work on different, you can work at the same time with the rest of your team. However, if you work on the same file, like let's say if you work on the specific scene at the same time as another person, or if you work on the same script at the same time as another person, there's going to be some errors. And so what we're going to do right now is that we are going to show what it looks like when you get those errors and how to deal with them. Right, so to give an example of what is a merge conflict, let's say I'm working on the project and we have our main camera, we have our square. Let's say I want to make this, I want to change this color of the square. Go over here, make it like that, no, right there. Let's say we want to make it like I'd like to make it a green color. Alright, that I feel like that is an improvement to this project overall. I'm going to save it. And I'm gonna go over to Sourcetree, and now it shows that I've made these files, or I've made these changes. I'm gonna stage them, and then I'm going to I'm gonna comment over here, and this square green. There we go, and then we're gonna commit, and then we're gonna push that over. And as you can see, we have an error right here. If you look when reading errors, it's a good idea to look at the very bottom, because gives you a sort of like message on to why you have an error. And if you see this, it says um, pull before pushing again. And so what this type of error means is basically, unbeknownst to me, someone has pushed onto the project before I've pushed to the project. And that's why we didn't see any pull notification. But someone's made change to their project before I have. Now, sometimes when you get this error, it's not the end of the world. If you poll, the person who made changes to the project might have made changes to a different part of the project than that where you have made. However, let's go ahead and poll. And if we see over here, this is not the case. If you can read, you now have merge conflicts on your working copy. Now, unbeknownst to me, on the side, Jasmine has messed with the square on her own side of the repository and then those changes over before without me knowing that. And I didn't pull those changes before I made changes myself. Okay, so we have a merge conflict. Okay, so how do we deal with it? If we can see here, we have a stage files and unstaged file. They both are at the test scene on our Unity project. That was the scene where I made an edit to the project, and as you can see here, it even says that there's a merge conflict, and that's conflicting. And so what you can do is, or how to deal with this conflict is, you need to, at the unstaged files, you need to right click on the scene, and over here at the options there is a resolve conflicts. Now if you can see here, the main two you want to look at is the resolve using mine options and resolve using theirs. So in this general case, me and Jasmine both made edits to the Unity test scene, which is a single file. Now that single file, we both messed with the square block, but even if we didn't, even if we messed with different components, like I had my own square, she had her own square, because the Unity test scene or just scenes in general are a single file, Sourcetree can't recognize, or GitHub in general can't recognize the fact that different things were messed with, so it will still give a merge conflict. And you can't take, and when you resolve it, you can't take part from one side and parts from the other side. You have to decide whether or not you want to use your changes or the already existing changes. Now at this point, I'm just going to resolve using mine. If you get this error, if this error occurs in your project, I suggest that you immediately let your team know so you can decide on whose whose scene you want to keep, who made more meaningful progress, because at the end of the day, someone's losing progress when there's a merge conflict. And good thing for us, we were just changing colors so we can give an example of a merge conflict. So I'm just gonna use mines, and after you do that, you click OK, and um, now that you staged, you just commit, and that commit will be the merge branch. Basically, this commit is um, having a merge conflict, creating a separate branch of the past version, or yeah, the past version that got pushed first, and your version that got pushed afterwards, causing the merge conflict. This push will now merge them together. Now we push them, That fixes that. And if we go over here, we can reload the scene, and I still have my green square. And now Jasmine also has my green square. And that's how you deal with merge conflicts. Right. Now we know how to deal with merge conflicts, but I wanted to go over a little something that you can do that might help you with your project if you ever come across a merge conflict. Right, so right here, I have a pull request. I know for a fact that Jasmine messed with the program. She changed the square to blue. Now I'm going to go ahead and go to the project and make it merge conflict. I'm gonna go, let's say we're gonna turn the square purple. I'm gonna save that, and now I'm going to have, there, I'm gonna have a commit. The stage just I'm gonna stage that change, and I'm going to change the square purple, and I'm gonna commit that. So, if I try to push, it's gonna tell me to pull first, and if I pull, I know I'm gonna have a merge conflict because the last scene Jasmine worked on was the test scene, which is what we want, well, what I want. So, if you are ever in this situation where you know if you're gonna pull, it's gonna cause a merge conflict, and you ran it by because you ran it by your team, um, you realize that you guys are in a problem, and the person who worked on the scene made a lot of progress, but you also have a lot of progress that you want to keep. There's no easy way. There's no way to just merge both projects together, just get rid of the problem. However, there is a way to where since we are in this situation right now, we still have our copy of the scene. As soon as we pull, it's going to the file is going to conflict and it's going to be um, corrupted until we complete the merge conflict and resolve using mine or resolves using theirs. So before you click pull, that's part that's important because again, the corruption. What we can do is we can just go to the Unity scene, and I still have the scene available. We can go ahead and take this scene, and I don't believe, yeah, Unity doesn't actually have they don't have the option available in the right click, but what we can do is we can control D and duplicate the scenes. So now let's just put my, so this is now my test. And we go over here, we can just take that file and we can commit it. Crisis. Hopefully ever, and we're gonna commit that. And now we can pull, and now we have a merge conflict. And now we can go over here, resolve, and then resolve using Jasmine's because again we made a save copy. And over here you say the open scenes has been modified externally. When you see this, if you click reload, the your test scene is going to be corrupted because it is dealing with a merge conflict right now. However, if you are in this state where you're in the merge conflict, you can still save your scene because over here there's an ignore option. So if you click ignore, this becomes its own scene, or until you until actually I'm not sure when it updates, but until it does, right now it's safe, but eventually it will update next time you open up the project, or after you finish dealing with this merge conflict, it's going to update. But now you have still have an opportunity to duplicate the project. And actually, there's another way. The Control D is one way, and also you can just go over here and save as. So you can save this scene as a new scene and just name it again, name it something else, and then you can um, you can avert this crisis to an extent. Alright, so I'm gonna go over here. I'm gonna finish up this resolves using theirs. Okay, commit that, and push all that over, and we're done. And if we go back over here, we're gonna reload. There we go. We got Jasmine's blue square. So now we have that. And if we go over to this scene, my scene, I have my purple square. Now the reason why this is helpful is that we don't have one scene with both of them on. Um, However, if we go over to my scene, we can easily just take the square, Control C, go to the other scene, Control V. Now we have both squared. You can easily just copy game objects from one scene to another scene and then save that, and then now the scene is obsolete, we can just delete it. Alright, so that's another way to deal with uh, merge conflict. Well, it's the same way, but um, it's something you can do if you're in a real pickle with merge conflict. And that concludes our version control workshop. If you have any questions or came across any problems, feel free to ask for help in our Discord. We have a specific Git help channel for people who need it. We hope that this workshop was helpful to you, and we thank you for listening in. Alright, have a good one.